Hello friends, welcome back to another video and welcome to 2024. I hope you had a great New Year's and you slid smoothly and are having a happy and healthy January so far. I figured today we'll have a super cozy, comfy, relaxed video. A little bit of planning. I have a few goals that I want to kind of stick to this year. I'm not setting any resolutions per se, but I'm trying to stick with some goals that I started last year and then kind of push to do more of those. For example, I did a lot of food planning or meal planning 2 years ago, and last year I kind of stunk at it. So this year I'm hoping to do my meal planning a little bit more, testing out new recipes, not just with cooking, but also baking. So I have a couple goals with my baking area as well. I won't be sharing a ton of my baking stuff verbally, but we'll go ahead and make some recipes throughout the year. And I'm hoping to at least post 1 or 2 recipes a month, just so we can have a couple tasty little treats. And then I'm going to go ahead and work on my book bullet journal. That's one of my big kind of goals for myself this year. I showed in my last video, I did a little bit of book bullet journaling last year, but I wasn't very good at keeping up with my stats or keeping up with writing, and I want to fix that this year. I think for me, it's really good for me to be able to write a quick note about the book I've read, so that way I can go back and look at those notes later on in the year, especially at the end of the year when I'm trying to figure out which ones were my favorite and not just go based off of star ratings. So this year I'm pushing more for myself to do a little bit more writing. So I figured today we'll do a little setup, and I want to set up my book bingo this year as well. I loved doing that last year. As I mentioned in my last week's video, I did hit a book bingo, but there were a couple I didn't complete, and I kind of want to push myself to try to do those ones as well. So I'm going to add some old book bingo challenges and then put some new ones in there as well. We'll go ahead and make the book bingo together in this video and do a couple other little things in the book journal. And another big task for myself is challenging myself to read some books that I wouldn't normally read. So I chose 12 books for 2024, so at least once a month, or hopefully once a month, I'll read one of these books. And they're a little bit more out of my comfort zone or a little bit different. And I found this list actually online. So I found Times Magazine released 25 most anticipated reads of 2024, or new releases of 2024. And so I thought I'll stick to this one list, find 12 books that I want to read off this list, and then I'll have that in my book bullet journal so that way I can kind of check mark which ones I've read. The hard part will probably actually be getting them here in Germany, but we'll worry about that when it comes time. So today will be food planning, book bullet journaling. I'll make some dinner, which I'm gonna make some waffles with cheese and ham and spinach. Sounds really weird, but they're so delicious. So I'll be making those a little bit later on tonight and just having a super fun, cozy night. So I recommend grabbing a good, delicious cup of tea or a coffee wherever you are. I always like an evening coffee. And we'll go ahead and get started with a couple little projects. I'm actually running out of light, so what we'll do is talk about the 12 books first. And if you're not interested in these 12 books, go ahead and check out the chapters below. If you're more interested in the bullet journal, check out that. If you're more interested in the waffles, you can check out that, or the food planning. That's all listed in the chapters below, so you can skip around if you like. But we're going to go ahead and start with the 12 books of 2024, so that way we don't run out of light and I don't become a dark little circle. So I have a few notes on my phone, so I'm going to pull those off of my phone, and then I have them also listed. There's a little tiny metal thing on this and it just hit me in the nose. And I also have them listed in my book bullet journal as well. The first is going to be Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. It's going to be released January 23rd. Also, as a note, if I pronounce any of these incorrectly, I do apologize. I'm going to try my best. I'm also going to go ahead and read the little blurb that Times Magazine wrote that's underneath each of these books to see if you're interested. And if you are interested, maybe we can do a little reading buddy thing. But this is what Times Magazine had to write. In poet Kaveh Akbar's debut novel, a newly sober Iranian immigrant befriends a terminally ill painter living in a museum. The form traits with the author. Akbar was born in Tehran and is also in recovery. Martyr captures the bond between the unlikely duo, punctured by Akbar's lyrical prose. So one of my big goals, also in my book bingo, so spoiler for book bingo, I have read a book of poems, and that's something I wanted to do last year that I didn't do, and I'm not normally a poetry reader. But I think this is going to be a very interesting one, as this is actually a longer story. It's actually a story captured in poetry, and I think that's really interesting, and it's going to be a very different type of read, but I'm very intrigued. And I think it's going to be very intriguing also to read about this friendship or this relationship between these two characters. So that's the first one. This is The Women by Kristen Hanna. Kristen Hanna is actually the one that wrote The Nightingale, and I loved that book. It's one of my favorite books. I thought it was captivating and heartbreaking and just so interesting. It's about women who helped during World War II. They lived in Paris, and then they were kind of in charge of the information getting traveled around. And it's very intriguing and very good. So if you're interested in reading about World War II and the women, what the women did during that time, I recommend this one, or that one. But this one's called The Woman, and Times Magazine had to say, in The Woman, she delves into how the lives of young American women who volunteered to serve in Vietnam were shaped by the conflict. The historical fiction epic centers on Frances, or also known as Frankie, a 20-year-old nursing student who enlists in the Army Nursing Corps in 1965, right before her older brother Finley is killed overseas. I think this is going to be a very heartbreaking story, but also very captivating, just like The Nightingale. And so this is more of a book that I would generally read, but I haven't read a book that is connected to Vietnam. So I think that's going to be a very interesting and very, how would I say, another take on a big part of our history, but written more fictionally. So that's one of them, and that one's also going to be released on February 6th. The next one is called The Book of Love by Kelly Link. On my phone, I've taken a picture of the description, so I have to sometimes look at my book, so I apologize. And I'm sorry I'm not looking at you, but I'm just reading to you. So, I had to say about The Book of Love by Kelly Link. In her highly anticipated debut novel, Pulitzer finalist Kelly Link takes readers on a surreal journey to fictional coastal town in Massachusetts. It's been nearly a year since teenager Laura, Daniel, and Mo disappeared and were later presumed dead, leaving Laura's sister Susanna grieving and alone. But then the impossible happens. The trio, alongside another older spirit, are resurrected by a mystical being the kids previously knew as their high school music teacher. The four formerly deceased characters are forced to compete in a series of high-stakes magical challenges. The winners get to stay alive. The losers will be sent back to the realm of dead. Link weaves together elements of horror, fantasy, magical realism in a twisted, turning, and often whimsical tale. So this one, I just finished The Book Eaters, and this reminds me a lot of that like gothic, dark fantasy, and I think that's why I'm intrigued on this one. Again, I would say this is more towards what I would normally read, but it's a new approach of what I would normally read, because I like whimsical, cozy fantasy, but this is more gothic fantasy. That's going to be a little bit darker, I think, and I think it'll be quite fun, a fun read. This one's going to be released on February 13th, or planned to be released on February 13th. The next one's called Splinters by Leslie Jameson. This is a memoir, so I have a couple memoirs actually on this list, but this one's a memoir, and Times Magazine had to say, in a memoir that centers the trials and triumphs of motherhood, Leslie Jameson, the best-selling author of The Recovering and The Empathy Exams, recounts the disintegration of her marriage in the months after her daughter was born. Through piercing prose, Jameson delivers an intimate account of her relationship with men, her parents, her child, and herself as she investigates, in her own words, the difference between the story of love and the texture of living it. That just sounds really heavy. I don't have children, and I may be engaged but not married, and we just have 2 cats, and our cats have, I think, made our relationship stronger. But I can't imagine having a child and then having to go through all of that heartache of losing your partner. And so I'm very curious as to how this book is going to be, this memoir is going to tell this story, and how Leslie it's almost like opening up her heart and looking into it. And so it's going to be very, very hard to read, I think, but also very fascinating. And I think it's really going to be eye-opening in different ways. So I'm excited for that one. The next one's called Grief is for People by Salone Crosley. This one's going to be, the last one's released on February 20th, sorry. And this one, Grief is for People by Salone Crosley, is going to be released on February 27th. Okay. And Times Magazine had to say, from the author of the 2020 new novel, Cult Classic, and the 2008 best-selling essay collection, I Was Told They'd Be Cake, which is an amazing collection of essays. So if you haven't read that, I really highly recommend it. Comes a memoir about friendship, love, and death. Shortly after Salone Crosley's New York apartment was burglarized, one of her closest friends, book publicist Russell Perrault, died by suicide. Crosley unpacks the distressing time which took place over a span of just 1 month in 2019 to craft a poignant remembrance of her late mentor, an influential yet flawed figure in the high-pressure publishing industry. She elegantly possesses her grief over two seamlessly unconnected traumas in her life. So we're not just reading about somebody's grief and somebody's pain, but we're also reading about, I think we're going to be touching some parts in the publishing area, which after reading Yellowface, which is fictional but plays on some real ideas, I think it'll be very interesting to kind of get a different perspective and something that's true. Even if we don't touch too much in the publishing area, it's going to be really interesting to see this relationship and see how she's dealt with these types of traumas, especially since these are things anybody would wish on themselves or wish so close together. I think it's going to be another hard read, but also very fascinating and hopefully very good. The next one, called Wandering Stars, so this is book 6 out of the 12 by Tommy Orange, also released on February 27th. This one I think I have to say I'm more connected to. Over the last year, I've been trying to connect more to my Native American heritage. I come from a couple different tribes in the Pacific Northwest. And my family wasn't very connected to that when I was younger, but me and my siblings have decided that we would love to reconnect with our Native American heritage and really kind of understand what was happening, what happened, and what's happening now. So this one I think is going to be very eye-opening in the sense of these tribes and what's happening, but it'll make more sense when I explain, sorry. So this one's called Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. And Times Magazine had to say, Pulitzer Prize finalist Tommy Orange's new historical novel imagines how 3 generations of family are affected by the real-life Sand Creek Massacre of 1864, in which more than 230 Kenya and Aparo people were killed by the U.S. Army in Colorado. I do apologize if I pronounce those tribes incorrectly. I should have looked it up before reading this, but I'll go ahead and make sure I add a little text box so the names can be next to me as well. Son of a survival of the attack, a boy who was sent to the Carrizo Indian Industrial School and taught a curriculum designed to erase Native American history, Wandering Stars flips forward to 2018 in the aftermath of the shooting and reveals how the past is tied to the present. Again, if I do pronounce any of these incorrectly, I do apologize. I'm going to put the names here so we all can see them, but I think this will be a very fascinating story to follow, and most definitely very hard to read. To go back and understand the Native American history and understand that there were people living in the US before Europeans came over, and there's a culture and a life, and there's still culture, and there's still all these tribes all over the US, and it's amazing to learn about them, and I'm really excited to continue learning about my tribes, but it's also really good to learn about what else happened in the US during that time. So very interested in reading that. I know this one took place in 1864, and I think that's going to be also quite eye-opening reading so far back in the US history and understanding how it correlates to 2018 and even now in 2024. So, next book by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I've already read a book by this author, but he's passed not too long ago, I believe a couple of years ago. And Times Magazine, I'll go ahead and read this first and then explain my thoughts. So, Time Magazine said, arriving almost a decade after Nobel Prize winner Gabriel Garcia Marquez's death is a recent rediscovery novel, translated by Anna McLean from the original Spanish. Until August, set in the Caribbean, where a woman married for 27 years takes a new lover every time she comes to visit her mother's grave. As she gives it to her desire, a powerful narrative about love and freedom emerges. The novel promises to be full of the absurd circumstances the Caribbean magical realism master is known for. So, I've already read a book by this author. I cannot remember the name for the life. I have my book here that has my book journal. I can remember the name. Give me 1 second. And Other Demons. That's the other book I read. And this one was quite... I ended up rating that book a 3 out of 5. And it's because it was very crazy and kind of hard to study and kind of hard to understand at certain times. And it's a book I'm going to have to reread. I didn't dislike it. I found it very fascinating and just so weird and complicated. And we follow a young woman who ends up getting bit by a dog at a very young age, and people are like, oh, she has rabies, she has rabies, she has rabies. And we follow her love story kind of at the very end of the book. And it's just very mind-blowing and complicated. And so I'm very interested. I wanted to read another book by this author, and the fact that there's a new one coming out and it's also about love, but a little bit different, I thought, I'll give this one a try. So that's what I'm doing. I'm giving this one a try, and I'm very intrigued, and I'm kind of excited, and I'm hoping it's going to be very good. And it's going to be released on March 12th. The book will be The Morning Side by Tay Albright, which is going to be released on March 19th. In The Morning Side, Tay Albright introduces us to a half-underwater ruins of Island City, Manhattan, where preteen Sylvia and her unnamed mother have just moved into a decaying luxury high-rise. Adapted from Albright's 2020 short story of the same name, the dreamlike novel draws on the elements of folklore and fairy tales for a narrative set eerily close to present day that explores environmental collapses and human resilience. So, based on the fact of how our climate is going right now, and it just sounds like a fascinating story. It takes place underwater, and it's set in a different world, kind of. And I think it's going to be quite fascinating and very interesting. I don't really know what to expect from it, actually. As you can imagine, I'm thinking all these books are going to be quite interesting and fascinating, but that's why I chose them, because I thought they're going to be good. I hope. The next book we're going to go ahead and pick up is Salman Rushdie, I believe. It's going to be released on April 16th. This one's another kind of memoir connection. It's more of about a specific thing that's happened to this author. So on August 12th, 2022, Booker Prize winner Salman Rushdie survived a stabbing in which he lost sight in one eye and the use of his hands. The latter is coming back. While he's best known for his magical realism, Rushdie draws on his own experiences recovering from the traumatic attack in his latest book. In an interview with Time earlier this year, the novelist described writing the book as part of his healing process, a way of kind of taking charge of it and not letting the indecent control him. So I don't even know what to think of this, but it's going to be very interesting. And my partner said he's been interested in reading a book from this author anyways, and I thought this might be a very kind of eye-opening and different approach to reading his novels, especially since he's pulling from a very traumatic experience in his life. And I'm curious just to see how this book will be written through that kind of perspective. The next called Real Americans by Rachel Hung. It will be released on April 30th. And this is her second novel. So in her second novel, Rachel Hong serves up a story about race and power in America. Like her 2017 debut, Goodbye Vietnam, Real is set on the West Coast, this time on a small island off the coast of Washington State, which is where I'm from. It's 2021, and Lily Chen is a single mom raising a 15-year-old boy who decides to search for his birth father. But the journey is complex, and the uncovering answers about the boy's father only leads to more questions. By following 3 generations of family, Hong explores the forces that shape a person's sense of self and probes the connection between identity and fate. What more can I say about that? That just sounds fascinating and cool. Not cool. Cool's the wrong word. Cool in the sense of like, it's going to be very eye-opening and challenging and different. And I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to read this. Our next novel is The Strange Eventful History by Claire Massoud. It's going to be released on May 14th. This is probably the most out of character book for me. So I hope I like it, but it's going to be probably the more difficult one because it's just not something I would ever pick up. So the Time magazine says, acclaimed author Claire Massoud's own ancestry, this strange eventful history chronicles 7 decades in the lives of fictional family of Algerian-born French citizens, opening with the patriarch Naval Gaston while he is stationed in Greece as Paris falls to the Nazis. The novel unfolds as war, distance, politics, and faith test the family's ties. Massoud follows the Khazars from 1940 to 2010, weaving a complex multi-generation saga against the backdrop of World War II, the Algerian Revolution, and beyond. So I'm very interested in World War II. However, this deals with a lot of other ideas and bigger ideas. And so this one's going to be the most different novel than I've read before, but I think also a very eye-opening and fascinating one. As I've said, with all the books, they're all fascinating. So are the 12 books I'm looking forward to reading in 2024. They're also the most different books than I've normally read, and I'm super curious if you'd be reading any of these as well. So if you are, go ahead and post it in the comments below, or check out the list, and like I said, the list will be in the description, and see if there's any books on here that you find interesting. I kind of challenge you to pick up something that you normally wouldn't read, so we could challenge ourselves this year. But now that this has been a very long video, we're going to make it a little bit longer. We're going to go ahead and do a little bit of book bullet journaling and get that set up so that we can get ready for this year and start talking about different books and start logging different books in our bullet journal. Go ahead and create our food plan for this week and have dinner. So I hope you're really excited for this cozy, comfy, relaxed rest of the video, and yeah, I'll see you guys with book journal. I super appreciate you guys being part of this video and just being part of my life. I'm super excited to also come up with some new fun projects to do in 2024. Actually keeping up with my book bullet journal, which is one of my #1 goals. And let me know if you guys are interested in continuing to see book bullet journal stuff on here. I'm going to try to keep up with it. I will also be sharing probably more of my food planning because I think if I share it on here, then I'm more likely to stick to it, but we'll see what happens. I do appreciate you guys being here. I hope your 2024 is going to be grand and wonderful. I would love to hear what your guys' goals are as well and see what you're going to be up to, see what you're hoping to accomplish, and maybe we can keep each other accountable. And yeah, again, thank you so much. If you guys did like this video, by the way, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It helps me out a lot. If you like this sort of content or like anything about books and baking and coziness and happiness, go ahead and subscribe. I try to put out a video at least once a week going over something in that genre of areas. And I really, again, hope you have a wonderful start to your 2024, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Until then, ciao!